Hi, I'm Alexandra Earth, and we are back to read the Glendale and Cherry Creek Chronicle. We're going on to page 2, and it's November 2nd, 2021. Here we go. Blasting with boils. Look up in the sky. Only a few things in the 40s and 50s media ever affected me as a little boy. One thing was for sure, I would never end up working on radio. But my memories about that golden time are pretty significant. One of my earliest memories is my sister and my grandmother and my mother and myself marching around the breakfast table to Don McNeil's Breakfast Club. The television shows that really influenced me were I Love Lucy, You Asked for It, science fiction theater, and, of course, Superman. It's been announced that the original Superman motto of truth, justice, and the American way has been ditched. So now the super motto is truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. Doesn't that sound like Stalinism? Glorious people build glorious tomorrow. Or glorious people build new hydroelectric dam. Or in the case of DIA, glorious people build glorious airport. Now, old Superman really had an impact on me until, of course, I discovered my uncle's collection of Playboy magazines. And the first time I ever kissed a girl after a baseball game. But Superman was all of our alter egos. I wore those Allegheny County welfare glasses, and there were many times I wished I could have ducked into a phone booth and come out and kicked some big old kid's ass. But George Reeves was Superman, and Bud Collyer was Superman on radio. These people meant something, and now a better tomorrow? There's another part of this, and by now I'm sure you've heard Superman's son is bisexual. His name is John Kent. On October 11th, John Kent, Superman's son, who wears the iconic S on his shield, came out as bisexual. All the sex I get, I buy, so I guess it's sort of a modern world. But the American way? Have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris killed the American way? Have Jared Polis and Michael Hancock killed the American way? Who can my grandson look up to? The bisexual part doesn't bother me a bit. It's the American way thing. As you know, when those young guys, Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, invented Superman in the spring of '38, they were staring down the barrel of the Nazis. They were using professional wrestlers and bodybuilders, and if they were going to keep the bad guys away from America. I think it's too late. The bad guys are here. I was also saddened to hear that they were going to build a better tomorrow. As Nancy Reagan said when Barbara Bush said that they were going to have a kinder, gentler American, Nancy quipped, "Kinder and gentler than who?" We're going to build a better tomorrow, better than the greatest generation, better than the men who stood at Valley Forge, better than the men at Gettysburg, better than the young men and women who gave their souls in Southeast Asia and Iraq. A better tomorrow? Yeah, look up in the sky. By Peter Boyles. All right. Peter Boyles brings the intensity. I'm into it. Okay, and then we've got some ads. Okay, join us for a winter spectacular this holiday season, December 27th through January 2nd, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. at 4 Mile Park. Purchase tickets at 4milepark.org. art installations, kids' craft activities, seasonal snacks and beverages, scavenger hunt video games, ice skating, December delights. Okay, right. Guest editorial. Torn Afghan postage stamps forecasted the Taliban's takeover, by Jack Van Ens. As a stamp collector, for over half a century, I searched the U.S. postage stamps featuring well-centered designs. These stamps on mailed letters lack defects, such as paper thins or perforations cutting into designs on the stamps. The paper on which they were printed looks fresh, as if these stamps were recently purchased at a post office. Collectors desire such stamps because they have crisp, colorful images. Prior to 1891, early Afghan stamps showed few features prized by today's stamp collectors. Prior to cancellation devices appearing in 1891, Afghans used their fingertips to gouge, rip, or deface a stamp's edges before affixing it to an envelope. The intent was to prohibit the stamp from being soaked off a letter reused on a subsequent mailing. By ripping stamps, senders canceled them before placing these stamps on mailed envelopes. After 1891, cancellation devices replaced a sender's fingers, mutilating postage stamps. In the United States, such cancellation devices were called obliterators, an apt description of how Afghans defaced their stamps before posting them on letters. These ragged Afghan stamps serve as an apt metaphor for the mayhem, violence, and desperation of terrified citizens at the Kabul airport trying to get out of their homeland before the Taliban killed them. Quotes, I know, many Afghans who helped the American were left behind and now live in jeopardy, and I realize more chaos and violence are in the offing. End quote. Remorsefully, writes American history professor emeritus James Bratt of Calvin College, now Calvin University, located in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in a September 13th, 2021 Reformed Journal blog, Afghanistan, a 9/11 postmortem. Bratt continues, but that's how colonial occupations always end. Think Vietnam, think Algeria, think India in 1947 and Palestine in 1948. It ain't pretty because colonial occupation, like the U.S. military presence in Afghanistan, is at least oppressive and often brutal. And when it lifts, there's hell to pay. The goal then is to avoid occupation in the first place. 2 decades ago, on 9/11, Al-Qaeda terrorists attacked the U.S. using commercial jetliners filled with civilian passengers as weapons of destruction. 3 days after these attacks, only California Democrat Representative Barbara Lee did not cast her vote to authorize U.S. military engagement in Afghanistan. Lee called this popular congressional action, endorsed by most Americans, as blank check. Cashing in on war without defined, measurable goals, what the outcome of the war effort would look like, and a timetable when U.S. forces would return home. These faulty judgments, looking like early hand-canceled Afghan stamps, cost the U.S. dearly. How could $988 billion spread over 2 decades, desperate, disappear so fast, and the Taliban take over so swiftly? Asked Professor Bratt. The book of Proverbs portrays God as a wise woman who cautions nations not to act like know-it-alls, who rarely question what they naively assume is true about military policy. I hate pride, arrogance, evil behavior, and twisted speech, declares a woman who portrays wisdom and acts as a stand-in for God on the world stage. Advice and priceless wisdom are mine, she declares, Proverbs 8, 12, 13. It is unwise to assume boundaries between Afghanistan and Pakistan, separate and influenced tribes who have lived in their rural communities for centuries. British diplomat Sir Mortimer Durand took a 19th century map and haphazardly drew a rough line on it in 1893, a broader name in his honor. The Durand line was drawn on paper, but not drawn in the hearts of the Pashtun tribe that includes 40% of Afghanistan's population. The Durand line forms the very porous border between Afghanistan and what is now Pakistan. In 1893, however, what we today call Pakistan was still part of India. It did not become an independent nation until 1947. So, Pashtun villages straddled this border and for decades gave haven to the Taliban on the run from the U.S. forces. What happened in Afghanistan? U.S. forces won significant victories against the Taliban, who then retreated among their Pashtun people in Pakistan. After getting rearmed, the Taliban crossed the border and continued fighting our military forces. The Pashtuns, however, regard the Taliban as their warriors, protecting them from corrupt Afghan officers who line their own pockets with American money for strengthening and training the Afghan army. Moreover, some Afghan provincial leaders the U.S. supported aligned themselves with organized crime and drug smuggling, fueled by Afghanistan's vast opium trade. The Taliban detest these corrupt officials as enemies of their Pashtun people. The Taliban have always controlled vast rural areas, no matter how victorious U.S. forces prevailed in key cities such as Kabul. When they had the Taliban on the run, our military rarely engaged them in Pakistani havens, lest U.S. forces interfere with their allies' sovereignty. Our government downplayed how in 2011, the U.S. Navy SEALs killed Osama bin Laden, hiding in a safe house adjacent to Pakistan's top-rated military academy, like our West Point. The Taliban also respect ancient cultural habits that our well-meaning troops did not know. For instance, Pashtun chieftains in rural villages negotiate eye to eye. Our troops entered villages using sunglasses to block the sun's piercing rays. Wearing sunglasses during negotiations offends Pashtuns. Showing civility to Afghan women and girls, our troops talk to them on the streets. Again, a cultural norm in the U.S. is what Pashtuns shun. The U.S. culture is what Pashtun shun. Men do not converse with women in public. Continued on page 22. Okay. Consequently, when the U.S. troops moved out, the Afghan army sided with their Pashtun tribal chieftains and allowed the Taliban to swiftly take over the nation and the capital of Kabul without resisting them. This messy takeover of Afghanistan was forecasted by its 19th century postage stamps, which were intentionally torn, ripped, or gouged as a primitive way to prohibit them from being used on the mail. Similarly, primitive Taliban canceled U.S. efforts to build a democracy in their homeland because they won over Pashtun's tribes. Rock solid loyalty. You may visit the Reverend Dr. Jack R. Vannin's website at www.thelivinghistory.com or email him at vanensfam@juno.com. Okay, well-written piece, a little history. Alright, a little relevance. I'm just gonna not talk about that. Anyway. 15 days to slow the spread. Yet it was on Friday the 13th, a day steeped in mythology as a day of ill omens, in March of 2020, that President Donald J. Trump, speaking in the White House Rose Garden, declared a national emergency that could free up $50 billion to help fight the pandemic, and said that he was empowering the Secretary of Health and Human Services to waive certain laws and regulations to ensure that the COVID-19 virus can be contained and patients treated. To unleash the full power of the federal government, I am officially declaring a national emergency, Trump said. 2 very big words, he added. Yes, they were the marked and the beginning and the end of his presidency. The concept was to institute on a state-by-state basis lockdowns, mask mandates, and social distancing so that COVID-19 cases would be spread over a longer period so that the ICU beds and ventilator machines would not be overwhelmed. All we had to do was go on a stay-at-home vacation for 15 days and all would be well. Approaching the 2-year anniversary of that declaration, we cannot be amazed at our overwhelming naivete. The result was a long-term worldwide recession, the loss of personal freedom and liberty throughout the once called free world. From Italy to Australia to the imposition of the dictatorship of the public health bureaucracy, if Karl Marx had only realized that the overthrow of democracy and capitalism did not require a bloody revolution, but simply a public health mandate, we could have saved tens of millions of lives. In China, the apparent source of COVID-19, and the only remaining major country with a communist government, perhaps they did. They closed the city of Wuhan, China, from the rest of China, but opened up Wuhan to the rest of the world. Brilliant. Of course, Trump was not the only politician egregiously to suffer due to the fateful Friday the 13th. Democrat New York Governor Andrew Cuomo initially rode the daily COVID briefings. In the end, however, he had to resign in disgrace, in part from the COVID-19 patients, from the discovery that his dictates that nursing homes had taken contagious COVID-19 patients cost thousands of lives, which he fraudulently tried to hide. The coup de grace comes with the revelation that the so-called Love Gov was, in fact, a serial sexual harasser. But what if Trump had ignored the advice from the ever-contradicting Dr. Anthony Fauci and the highly political Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and rode through the Ides of March, doing nothing but shepherding through the development of the distribution of vaccinations for COVID-19? The one European country that ignored all of the lockdown mandates and impingements on civil liberties was, surprisingly, Sweden. Headed by the Swedish Social Democratic Party. From the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, the public health agency Folkhälsomyndigheten embarked on a de facto herd immunity approach, allowing community transmission to occur relatively unchecked. There were no mandatory measures taken to limit crowds on public transport, in shopping malls, or in other crowded venues, while recommending only a limit of 50 people for gatherings. Sweden's mortality rates were lower than the European Union and the United States, and its economy prospered. In America, states like Nebraska, Wyoming, Florida, which limited quickly lifted COVID-19 restrictions, appear to have weathered comparatively well when put up against highly restrictive states such as New York and California. Colorado, under Governor Polis, took a somewhat middle ground and at least did not go with the draconian measure adopted by states such as Michigan under the leadership of Governor Whitmer. In Denver, we did not get to see up close and personal hypocrisy of the political elites when Mayor Hancock was at DIA texting to city employees not to travel over the Thanksgiving holidays while he was heading to Texas and Mississippi to spend the holidays with family. Was it all worth it? The autocrats and the authoritarians and their admirers on the left and the right will tell you it was. They certainly learned how easy it is to cower and control a populace. But at least for some, the lesson learned is that next time they will tell us the equivalent of it is just 15 days to flatten the curve. We know what they mean. It is time to again destroy liberty and freedom for as long as they can possibly get away with it. Editorial board. Okay, so now we're on to the anti-vaxxer Denver cops are paying a steep price for sticking to their guns by Luke Schmaltz. An embattled Denver Police Department is learning firsthand what it means to operate under a mayor who insists on politicizing a private medical issue. On August 2nd, 2021, Denver Mayor Michael Hancock issued an edict declaring that all city employees, as well as some key private sector workers, had until September 30th to get vaccinated for COVID-19. This, of course, includes police officers, 7 of whom have refused to comply with the vaccination order. The group is currently taking legal action against the mayor's office while facing disciplinary measures as well as termination of their employment. Thinning out a skeleton crew. Court documents show an injunction filed against the city by officers Dwayne Rogers, Les Tucker, David Curtis, Bart Stark, Jonathan Christian, Nick Elliott, and Rich Ziegler. The suit was an 11th-hour attempt to dispute the vaccine mandate, which, if not complied with, will result in the 10-day unpaid suspensions followed by dismissal, if not followed by the end of that time. At a time when theft, vandalism, assault, break-ins, drug trafficking, and trespassing have reached a fever pitch in the downtown area, it seems rather counterintuitive to sanction the wholesale termination of police officers who are making a choice which they considered to be a private medical matter. Attorney Randy Corporon, PC, represents the group of police officers. He moved a block to the mandate before District Court Judge Shelley Gilman on Wednesday, September 29th. Judge Gilman dismissed the case, however, stating that the court had no authority over the issue because the officers did not exhaust all of their administrative remedies before taking the matter to court. Specifically, this would have been the first petition of the Denver Department of Public Health to overturn the mandate. Red tape blues. In the meantime, Corporon has filed an administrative complaint with the Denver Department of Public Health, DDPH, and he is currently awaiting notice of a hearing being set. The only thing they told us, he begins, is that they will be hearing and they will be letting us know 10 days before that hearing. Corporon feels that DDPH is deliberately hindering the appeal in order to goad the defiant officers into compliance. The mystery of their process is whether they will expedite this or drag their feet, Corporon explains. The thing about these government entities and these big corporate companies is that the longer they drag it out, the more people will just cave and get the shot. Corporon explains why he took the matter to court before all administrative remedies were exhausted. We believed that we had legal exceptions based on the exigency and the urgency, as well as the futility of going through that petition process first. But the judge disagreed. The immediate blaring, disconcerting issue of the loss of qualified, able-bodied police officers at a time when the circumstances call for hands on deck. When asked if he thinks the mandate will spur a mass migration of police officers from the DPD, Corporon explains, "As much as I hate the practical result of it, I hope so. I don't see any other way to stop this incredible, omnipotent, growing government power grab unless people don't bite the bullet, accept the consequences, and move on," he says. Some of these police officers are great cops with tons of experience, and I'm sure they would be welcomed in other places like Texas or Florida, or in cities that don't try to force an untested treatment into people's bodies. No gain, no pain. Corporon further explains, by resistance from the police, from the people in the trenches, and the best way to counteract government overreach. The short-term pain will be worth the long-term gain if more and more people stand up, he says. He then goes on to explain the collective concerns among his colleagues and clientele about the vaccinations. "I worry about the long-term effects. If somebody has the vaccine and new strains of the virus come on, is their body going to react improperly? We have heard about the risks of reproductive systems, and for people who are giving this to their kids, God Almighty," he attests. "I have cases in my office now where divorced parents and even parents who are still together are fighting legally whether to vaccinate their kids as young as 10 years old." Corporon goes on to express his outrage about the wholesale public adoption of these untested treatments. "I am baffled by the media propaganda, the fear, and the blind trust in unelected bureaucrats and so-called scientists who change their own positions constantly." He says, "I just had a news crew over here interviewing me about the Eric Coomer defamation case. Of course, they show up masked and they wouldn't come inside my building because they found out I was unvaccinated. I'm not sick. Plus, they have masks on and we are maintaining a safe distance of 6 feet apart. Okay, we can stay out here in the rain. It's fine with me." While the charge to overturn the mandate seems daunting, Corporation maintains that a positive outcome for his Denver police officer clients is not out of the realm of possibility. The best outcome would be an agreement that the orders were issued in error and that they would be rescinded. Of course, you can't unvaccinate people, but for the very least, you can restore cops who've lost their jobs and could restore their pay. The counterproductivity of the issue is typical of Denver politics, where counterintuitive policies and the backward thinking are the order of the day. It would seem that in the effort to protect citizens from harm by mandating vaccination for police officers, the populace is being left even more exposed to danger by firing the cops who want to be there to serve and protect. Let's see. Dylan's Tech Service, your friendly local tech expert. Available 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Email Dylan at Mr./Dylan.com. Mobile phone number 720-556-2254. A young, energetic computer tech who is the best I've ever worked with, especially with Apple products. Testimony from Dean Peterson, Bull and Bush Brewery. Reliable and reasonably priced. Guarantees his work. Oh, we read that. Let's see. Denver's best late night menu. Inga's Alpine Tavern, now open for lunch. Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. $10 pizza, your choice, cheese, pepperoni, or sausage. $5 Modelo. Thursday through Saturday, kitchen open until 2 a.m. Sunday and Monday, kitchen open until midnight. Live music, DJ, poker every Monday, trivia every Wednesday, karaoke every Saturday, NFL Sunday ticket. Inga's Alpine Tavern and Lounge is located on 5151 Leedsdale Drive, Denver, Colorado, 80246. The phone number, 720-389-6203. www.ingasalpinetavern.net. Okay, we're gonna pause and come back and read later. Thank you for tuning in with me. I'm Alexandra Earth, and we are reporting live, my live time, November 2nd, 2021. Hope to see you when you tune in next.